and welcome to another video here on my channel, Morbid History. Today we're going into a very interesting part of Swedish history. One of my favorite when I was younger. It's the Swedish witch trials in the 1600s. Of course, there's been witch trials both before and after, but these years were like the big ones. So yeah, let's get into it. Part 1. The beginning. We begin this story in Dalarna, 1667. In the middle parts of Sweden called Dalarna lived an 11-year-old girl called Gertrud Svensdotter. She was out in the Swedish autumn herding some sheep, and with her she had an 8-year-old boy called Mats. Together they sat down to eat and they started fighting, from what we know, over a piece of bread. Gertrud, being both stronger and older, of course won. After this they noticed that the sheep had walked over a small river, now feeding out on a small island. Gertrud, knowing full well that she could not return home that day without the animals, braved the stream and walked the animals back one by one. Mats, thanks to his hurt pride, went home to his dad that day and told him a tall tale. He told him that the reason why he couldn't help the sheep and Gertrud could was because she had summoned the devil. The devil kindly appeared and put some ointment on Gertrud's feet to help her walk on water like Jesus, so she could go there and help these poor animals. The father was of course on his son's side. He decided to go to the mayor and tell him this story. And then the mayor of course went and told the town priest. We can imagine that the story was embellished from every step of the way down to the priest. Either way, this priest called Lars Elvius, he was a one-eyed priest actually. He was seen, and he was actually a good man. He was just a man of his times. He was a very devout Christian and hell-bent on saving people, of course, and bringing them to heaven. That's what other goals did he have? Either way, he brought Gertrud in fairly quickly and started an interrogation. The meeting of these two individuals would be a chemical reaction that exploded into the mass hysteria that would ravage Sweden and kill more than 300 innocent lives by the end of it. While talking to Gertrud, he encouraged her to confess. Gertrud was by all accounts a great storyteller, so she told him what he wanted to hear. She had gone away to the witches' Sabbath. In Sweden we call this blåkulla. She had pointed out 19 people by the end of these interrogations. I don't think she had any idea what this actually meant and how this would affect other people. Because as a side note, the children during these times had been talking about blåkulla and Satan as any kind of entertainment any children would have during the ages. They didn't have phones or books or computers, so on a boring rainy day they would sit huddled and tell each other stories, most often told to them by their parents. To them, going out in the woods and meeting a skogsrå, a troll, a giant, or even Satan wasn't even impossible. It was just there. To them it was just as real as the fox or the bear. So we can just imagine that when Mats told these stories, and then Gertrud in her turn told these stories, it was just child's play to them. To understand these stories even further, we'll go into what is Blåkulla, or the Witches' Sabbath here in Sweden. Blåkulla. They confessed that Blåkulla is situated in a delicate large meadow, whereof you can see no end. The place or house they meet at had before it a gate painted with diverse colours. Through this gate they went into a little meadow distinct from the other, where the beasts went that they used to ride on. But the men that they made use of in their journey stood in the house by the gate in a slumbering posture, sleeping against the wall. So, what was Blåkulla? This was actually quite a festive little tale before all this. The story was that to go to Blåkulla, of course you needed to be invited by the devil, but after that the Swedish witches didn't go on brooms or anything like that. They chose to ride on upside down cattle, usually cows. If they didn't have any cows available, they could just take their husband, the priest, or at one point even the mayor. Once at Blåkulla, and taking with them a bunch of children for some reason. Blåkulla was set up like a giant wedding hall with large tables filled with food. They would eat meat and bread and butter and cheese, stuff they wouldn't have a lot of usually. There would be naked ladies sitting upside down on the tables with candles sticking out of their bums. And when they didn't need candles anymore, I guess, they would take them out and start trumpeting out of their bums too. That was quite festive. So they all started dancing, and this would then lead to fighting, arguing, swearing, and at last some orgies. And that would usually be the end of it. Satan himself would show up as, what would you call a spelman? A festive man with like blue coat and blue pants, a high hat and a red beard. Of course, lots of sinister stuff would go on, besides the fighting and cursing and orgies and all that. But that was the main gist of it. But now, let's get back to Gertrud's story. She had by now become a star witness. She pointed out 19 people in the end. One of these people happened to be the 19-year-old maid Märit, called Stor-Märit, which means Big Märit, because she had a little sister who was called Lill-Märit, Little Märit. Märit, or Big Märit, had been a maid at Gertrud's father's farm. Gertrud's father was a widow, and when Gertrud's mother had died, he had planned to marry Märit. This did not please Gertrud. So we can all but guess that Gertrud had some kind of vendetta against Märit. Märit also had the disadvantage that she had a cut on her finger, which pointed to that she had been cut by the devil at Blåkulla and written her name in the devil's book. So Märit was promptly taken in for questioning. Gertrud had told them that she and Märit had, for the first time when Gertrud was only 8, ridden to Blåkulla. They had actually ridden on Gertrud's father's back all the way there. And Gertrud's father was not even trying to save these girls. He instead came in complaining of a backache, just like if someone had ridden him all the way to Blåkulla. Things didn't look good for Märit. The thing was that Märit denied it. Even when they told her that she had to confess to save her soul or she'd go to hell and all of these things that they had told Gertrud, actually. Märit was steadfast in her innocence. Also, after Gertrud's confessions, of course, a lot of other children came forward as child witnesses, telling stories about Blåkulla and just pointing fingers everywhere. These were nothing but fantasies, of course. Stories they've told each other when they were bored, as we said before. Some of these children turned out to be much better storytellers than others, but we'll discuss that in a later episode. To end this one, what happened to Gertrud and Marit? Gertrud and Marit were both sentenced to death as witches. But in Sweden at the time, the king had the last say on who could get executed or not. Gertrud was a child, so they could not execute her. Instead, she got flogged. And she had to stand outside of church in shame for a few days every week. She survived though for a few years, got married, and even had a baby. But that did not last long, and she died in 1675. And she died either of childbirth or the plague. This witch hunt ended in the execution of 8 people. Marit was supposed to be one of them, but she held fast to her innocence. They even had a mock execution up for her. In Sweden, they did not burn witches alive, so when they took Marit to the execution site, they actually took her to the place where they were supposed to chop her head off. 'Cause here in Sweden, at least, they thought that if you burnt the witch alive, they had time to summon the devil while in the flames waiting to die. If you chopped their head off, they would go straight to heaven, especially if they had actually confessed and gotten their sins forgiven. So this was what they did to Marit. They took her to the place where they were gonna chop her head off, and the plan was that if she there still held on to her innocence, she would be let go, but if she confessed in exchange for getting into heaven, they would cut her head off. But she still denied everything and kept her innocence, so she got away this time. So yeah, that was just the beginning. This was like the start of the whole mass hysteria that would follow. Thanks to Gertrud and thanks to Marit, a lot, and I mean a lot, of child witnesses all over Sweden decided to come forward. In the next episode, we're gonna talk more about that. We're gonna talk more about the executions and also the end. So yeah, thanks for watching this episode, and we have so much more to dig into. Like, I couldn't do this in one episode, maybe not even 2, we'll see, because there's so much to go through. So many characters, there's an evil priest, there's an evil child witness, there's lots of evil child witnesses, even if you can't call children evil, of course, so that's my bad, but you get the drift. There's so much going on. So yeah, stay tuned, and I'll be back soon with part 2 of this series. Have a good one! Bye bye!